Hello, hi, and welcome to this episode of the Mandy Mayer podcast. As per usual, this is a podcast where we chat all about your health, your fitness, your fat loss, your health, fitness, fat loss goals, and you achieving those goals, you starting to work on those goals, you understanding what you need to do to move forward to actually start creating consistency within your health and fat loss expedition. If you are new here and you are a new listener to this podcast, welcome and thank you for listening to this podcast. I have no doubt that you will learn something and you'll be able to start implementing certain changes into your lifestyle to create a healthier lifestyle. To all the regular listeners and to every single person that has rated and reviewed this podcast already, again, just from the bottom of my heart, a massive thank you. In today's episode, I'm going to be answering a couple of questions that I have received from some viewers or followers on Instagram as I opened up a question box within the stories on my Instagram account and asked if you have any questions that you want me to answer within an episode of the podcast. If you're not yet following me on Instagram, go ahead, go do so at Running for Mayor. There's a lot that you can learn from there as well. So on that note, let's get into your questions. Let's get those questions answered so that you can move forward with that knowledge, with the information, start implementing all of these things and just learn from some of the answers that I am going to provide within this episode to your questions. The first question that we've got is, hi Mandy, when do I weigh my food, raw or after cooking it? Please help, thank you. So what I will say straight from the word go, when it comes to tracking your calories is don't overthink it. Don't overthink it to the point that it overwhelms you, because a lot of the times now you're going to be running around, these thoughts are going to be running around in your head. Should you be weighing it raw? Should you be weighing it cooked? Then you're going to chop and change from raw to cooked. Then at the end of the day, you're going to be like, well, I'm not doing it correct anyway. And then you're just going to give up. So here's my advice. Weigh your food raw, stick to weighing it raw, move forward. That's it. Simple as that. Create consistency within the variable that you are using to log. So if you are using raw measurements to log your food, continue creating consistency with using raw measurements. Don't chop and change between cooked and raw, unless you buy a pre-made chicken, a roast chicken from Woolworths, for example. Then the chicken is already cooked. Then you would choose a data entry or an entry on your food tracking app that says cooked chicken. Other than that, really, don't overthink it. Weigh your foods raw, create consistency within that, because at the end of the day, tracking your calories is not only about tracking your calories, it's about learning from what you're tracking. It's about giving yourself or creating structure for your days when it comes to your food. It's about holding yourself accountable to eating certain foods. But I've seen so many people get overly fixated on very specific little things, and that fixation leads into, I want to say, overwhelm, and that then leads to someone potentially not logging and tracking food. So again, weigh it raw, don't overthink it, log the food, move on. If after a period of time you're like, oh shit, you're not losing any weight, then maybe that means there is a slight inaccuracy within your logging and tracking of your food. What do you do then? You just collectively drop your calories, because maybe at the end of the day, you log in 1,600 calories, but you're not consuming 1,600 calories. So if you drop your calories to 1,500, maybe now you'll be logging 1,500, but consuming 1,600, because maybe, just maybe, there is that slight inaccuracy. So again, when it comes to logging and tracking your calories, please, for the love of you creating consistency, don't overthink it. Logging and tracking calories is purely just one tool in your health and fat loss toolbox. There are loads and loads and loads of other tools. Now, on that note, I'm creating, or I have created, I just have not yet launched it, a fat loss or a health and fat loss course, a digital course. And within that course, I have covered every single little topic that you can think of, from logging your foods raw or cooked. What do you do if there's data that is missing from any food tracking app? How do you go about logging that? How do you log foods that don't necessarily have calorie values within that food tracking app or on a menu? right? I've gone into the finest and finest of details with this new course, digital course that I will be launching early next year. So if you want to get your hands onto that digital course, use the link in the show notes or in the comment section or wherever and register your interest to be the first to know about it, because I've literally gone through every single question that I've got over the years, and I've created an in-depth course when it comes to health and fat loss with almost, I want to say, 100 videos. That's been a little bit dramatic. I think it's about 83 videos at this moment in time. And as I was editing all those videos, all 83 of those videos, I was sitting there with the biggest smile on my face, and I'm like, if this doesn't explain health and fat loss, I don't know what does, right? Because, and it was just something I was so super proud of, because I'm like, this is something I would have benefited from during a couple of my several failed attempts at fat loss. Maybe I wouldn't have had so many failed attempts because I would have had that course that I have just created now. And that's why I've created it for everyone out there that is struggling. Anyway, we digress. Let's get back into the questions. Question number 2. What do you think of the new carnivore craze? Agree or disagree? Well, to start off, for me personally, I would disagree, for me personally, because I don't want to be eating only meat, and I want to reduce my chances of certain gut diseases, certain colon diseases, certain everything. And to do that, I want to eat a lot more fiber. I want to eat variety within my different food groups. I want to eat loads of different macronutrients from a health perspective, again, to create balance, but from a health perspective, to help the reduction of certain, I want to say, illnesses or diseases. So for me personally, I prefer to have balanced way forward when it comes to my food, not only from a fat loss perspective, but more so from a health perspective. Now, when it comes to my general thoughts around the carnivore diet is, again, you need to have a look at it, and realistically, you need to ask yourself, can you do this for the rest of your life? And if the answer is no, then it's not going to be fucking sustainable at all. So I know a lot of people might use the carnivore diet as an excuse to not eat vegetables, because I know that many people don't like eating vegetables. But again, I leave you with this question: where are you going to get your fiber from? Where are you going to get your micronutrients from? Where are you going to get all those good things from that really help your health, that you would benefit from a health perspective? At the end of the day, one thing you need to remember is this isn't only about fat loss, because you can look at someone from the outside and you can say, oh, they skinny, for the lack of better words, or they lean, for the lack of better words, they must be healthy. Who the fuck knows if they're healthy or not just by looking at someone? Maybe they haven't touched a vegetable or fiber in years and they're struggling with colon diseases or with any gastro illnesses or any gut problems. We don't know that just by looking at someone, right? Now, I'm not saying that that's going to happen with the carnivore diet, but chances are pretty good, because you lack in loads and loads of different foods and micronutrients, because essentially on the carnivore diet, all you're going to be eating is pretty much meat, if I have it correct, right? So again, each to their own at the end of the day, and everyone needs to make their own decision how they're going to move forward. For me personally, I like looking at it as overall my health and how my health is going to benefit from my food choices, and how these food choices add to a healthier lifestyle and a balanced lifestyle. And you would need to be able to make that decision for yourself moving forward. One thing I will reiterate is it's not only about fat loss. Guys, we need to move way beyond that. We really need to start moving way beyond that number on the scale. Any changes you are making now, any changes you start making now, have to be for your future self, right? So again, I know that the main goal is always going to be fat loss. Okay, and losing fat does help reduce the risk of certain diseases, or it does help improve your health markers. But again, you need to be realistic about it and say you're doing this for health benefits and not only for fat loss. And again, you always need to ask yourself, how long can I do this for? Can I do this for the rest of my life? If you can't do it for the rest of your life, then probably not the best idea. But like I said in the beginning, for me personally, it's a no-go because I like having a healthy gut and I like eating my fiber. I like being regular. I like reducing my risks of certain gut issues and diseases and things like that by creating balance within all the foods that I eat and having choices of different food groups, different macronutrients and different micronutrients. The next question we've got, it just reads creatine and coffee. Now, if you were going to ask a question, I'm really going to need more context to the question because this could mean anything. This could mean, can I mix my creatine with my coffee? This could mean, is creatine good for fat loss? This could mean, does coffee help with fat loss? Or it could mean, should I reduce coffee because of the caffeine in the coffee? Is that potentially going to help with the creation of a healthier lifestyle? Or creatine, should I be using it? Should I not be using it? But to ask a question like creatine and coffee, it's very difficult for me to give an answer or chat about it because there's not really a lot of context. If I look at it and I just answer it in the way that I understand it as to, should we be using creatine? If you are consistently smashing it out within the gym and you really have created consistency within your food choices, within your healthy habits, within your gym exercises, your workouts, then absolutely go for it and add creatine to it. But if you have not yet created consistency with anything and you are only starting your health and fat loss expedition and you are not even yet going to the gym or you're not even yet exercising as much as what you would like to, and you're still struggling with creating consistency within your food choices, I would say that creatine is probably not high on the priority list if you're just starting out and still struggling with other areas. But if you're at the point where you are smashing it out in the gym, your consistency is on point, and you just want to push a little bit longer in the gym, you want to feel a little bit stronger in the gym, lift a little bit heavier, sure, go for it. Add creatine to the plan. When it comes to coffee, right, and now I'm actually thinking about it, this question could have also meant, should I go for creatine or coffee? I don't know. Coffee, if you look at it, if you're thinking of using coffee as a pre-workout instead of using a actual pre-workout sort of supplement, then cool, coffee can work. It's going to give you that little bit of a boost in energy. Maybe you're thinking that you want to reduce your coffee because of the caffeine, because maybe you're not sleeping well. Then I would suggest then have a look at reducing your caffeine. Myself, for example, like I haven't drank caffeine, I don't know, it's probably about 3 weeks now. I speak under correction, maybe 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. And it has been, I've just seen the changes. My heart rate, my resting heart rate has dropped drastically. My anxiety has reduced. I am not getting heart palpitations, like my blood pressure has come down. And maybe I just didn't deal well with caffeine at this certain point in my life. But just a reduction, total reduction within caffeine has been a phenomenal change for me. Everyone's very different. Again, it's difficult for me because I struggle to understand the question. But, if you want to reduce caffeine because it is interfering with your sleep, go for it. Give it a go, check how it goes. Or if you want to add caffeine because maybe you want to use it as a pre-workout, absolutely. If you think adding caffeine or coffee to the plan is going to help with fat loss, then the answer would pretty much be no, because fat loss takes place when you are within a calorie deficit. So I would rather then focus or have you focusing on consistency with your calorie consumption and consistency with your daily movement, so your steps, as opposed to focusing on smaller things that are not so important, especially at the beginning of your health and fat loss expedition. If by any chance you have any other questions or you want to give me more context to this question, there is a link within the show notes as well where you can actually message straight to this podcast and I'll get the messages and I can answer the questions via that as well. Obviously via the podcast episode, but then I can see your questions coming through. The next question we've got is, what encouraged you to keep going and not eat all the junk food? So my biggest issue, which I've openly discussed in many of my first episodes of this podcast, was the consumption of alcohol. And the consumption of alcohol led to me over consuming junk food, because then I would be eating takeouts 7 nights a week or 5 nights a week, because I was at the pub every single evening after work, like maybe every second evening. I don't even know. There was a lot of evenings after work that I was at the pub. Okay. So for me, what I did was I actually cut out alcohol for the first 2 months or the first 3 months or something like that, because that gave me more control over my food habits or my food choices, because I wasn't intoxicated, or I wasn't overly tired, or I wasn't exhausted, or I wasn't hungover. I had mental clarity for the first couple of months, which allowed me to focus on my food choices and make calculated choices. Now, another big thing was willpower. Okay, so there was a lot of times where I was still craving those takeaways, but willpower and discipline. Those were two big things that I really, really take pride in the fact that I had, especially in the beginning of my health and fat loss expedition. And also, I didn't fully cut them out. I still allowed myself every now and again to have some fun foods. And that made a major difference, because when you're constantly fighting to not have any of your favorite foods, it does become a struggle. And that's where the willpower does get tested. And that's where the discipline does get tested. But the moment you allow yourself to have some of your favorite fun foods or takeaways in moderation, remember there has to be moderation, it allows you that sort of having the food without feeling guilty, and you know that it can be part of the plan. So it oftentimes does make it easier to say no to on quite a consistent basis. Okay, so again, you're going to be surrounded by, whether it's adverts on TV, whether it's adverts as soon as you walk in the shop, whether it's Uber sending you notifications at 7 a.m. in the morning asking if you're hungry, you need to figure out a way that works for you. Either delete your Uber app so that you don't get the notifications, your Uber Eat app, or then also allow yourself to have some of your favorite fun foods or your takeaways in moderation so that you don't feel like you're constantly fighting it. If alcohol is the factor that leads you towards taking out food or ordering from Uber Eats, then maybe look at reducing your alcohol consumption. You need to figure out what it is that is leading to you over consuming takeaways, and then ask yourself, what strategy can you put in place to actually reduce that? And again, all of these things have been covered in loads and loads of episodes of this podcast, but also in the new course that I am going to be launching. And as I sit here and I think about it, even more, you know, what led to me not eating all the junk food as posed in the question, it's just, I structured my days, I structured my meals, I planned my meals, I ate 3 volumed up meals every single day, and I prepped those meals in advance. So again, don't overlook how important it is to actually eat enough food throughout the day, eat enough whole food, proteins, your complex carbohydrates, fruits, whatever it is throughout the day. And you will be surprised at what a game changer that is. And then oftentimes you don't necessarily need such a massive, massive willpower. Yes, you do need it. Let's be real. Let's call a spade, or you do definitely need discipline. But again, don't be skipping meals. Don't be like saying, oh, I can never have takeaways again. Create balance. Eat your 3 meals per day. Volume those meals up with protein, with veggies, with complex carbohydrates. Incorporate your snack into the plan where you feel like you want to incorporate it into the plan, and continue pushing forward and create consistency within that. And then the last question that we've got is, how did you start? First step. Why didn't you quit when it was tough? How did I start? I was hurtful. I was so fed up with my own bullshit. I was fed up with my own excuses, and I was just tired of being sick and tired all the time. That's how I started. I woke up one morning, 1st of January 2016, after several failed attempts over several years, and I said to myself, enough is enough. I made a promise to myself that day, and I was like, you're going to do whatever it takes whatever it fucking takes, you're going to do. And you're not going to quit, whether it takes 10 years, whether it takes 10 months, whether it fucking takes whatever it takes. And that's what I was saying to myself. I was brutally harsh with myself that morning. And I made a promise to myself that day. And I was like, you're going to do whatever it takes, Mandy. You are not going to quit. Yes, you can rest. Yes, you can go into maintenance phase. Yes, you can stumble. Yes, you learn as you go. But one thing you never do is you don't quit. And I actually wrote that down in my journal. I wrote that down in my journal and I made that promise to myself. And I was like, no matter how hard it gets, you're not going to quit. And I think the biggest issue that I see these days, or any days, no matter what people are working on, whether it's health and fat loss or whether it's other goals, personal goals, whatever goals it is, the biggest thing that I see nowadays is people tend to give up so easily. I used to be the same. Honestly, I used to be the same. And people will give up at the first stumble. People will give up at the first hurdle. People are not willing to learn from their mistakes. People are not willing to accept that we need to have micro failures en route because we learn from those micro failures. People will, especially when it comes to health and fat loss, I do believe after many years of being on my own several failed attempts, of being on the successful attempts, of working with people, I believe the biggest thing that causes people to quit is number one, the scale, and number two, they're doing some silly, stupid, quick fix that is fully restrictive, some sort of restrictive diet, some sort of fad diet. And those are the two biggest things that lead to people quitting. That scale, not moving in the right direction. And when I started my successful attempt at my health and fat loss expedition, like I said to you, I made a promise. I said, no matter what happens, no matter how difficult it gets, no matter what that scale says, I am going to continue pushing forward. So again, don't let that scale be the reason that you quit, and don't do some silly, stupid fad quick fix. As simple as that. And make a promise to yourself that don't give yourself a different option. There's only one way forward, and that's to succeed. No matter how long it takes, no matter how difficult it gets, no matter how many hurdles, no matter how many speed bumps, no matter whatever gets in your way, no matter how long it takes, the only way forward, you can only give yourself one option, and that is to succeed. Okay, now this doesn't mean that you can't take a break. This doesn't mean that your weight can't fluctuate. This doesn't mean that you can't, make other priorities in life. Of course you can, of course. And I think therein lies one of the other biggest mistakes that people make, is that all or nothing mindset, right? So if you can't give it all now to your health and fat loss expedition, you quit. Whereas that shouldn't be the case, because your health and fat loss expedition is lifelong, okay? And that was one of the biggest realizations that I have had. And another big realization that I had is that it's all about your health, not necessarily about that number on the scale. And that's why I didn't quit, is because I didn't allow myself to fucking quit, okay? Whereas there's a lot of people out there that do allow themselves to quit. Now, if you go and you listen to every single episode of this podcast and you start working on the shift of your mindset, the change in your mindset, and you start removing these restrictive diets or these fad diet ideas, and you start focusing on balance, and you start focusing on proceeding as per normal, and you start focusing on this isn't a short-term quick fix, this is the lifelong changes that you are making, that's when it becomes slightly easier, for the lack of better words, not to quit. Okay, so again, like I said, the only reason I didn't quit is because I didn't allow myself to quit. That was never, ever going to be an option for me. Why? Because I had quit several times prior to that. And that morning when I woke up on the 1st of January 2016, I said to myself, you know how it feels to quit, because that's all you've been doing your entire fucking adult life whilst you've been trying to lose weight. And I know that sounds harsh, but that's exactly the conversation that I had with myself. And I was like, you know how it feels to quit, Mandy. You don't know how it feels to be successful with your health and fat loss expedition. So how about give it your best shot and not quit this time around and see how it feels. And look at me today. This is where I'm sitting, in a position where I can now speak to others about me not quitting and how you cannot quit either. All because I kept that promise to myself and I did not quit when it got tough. Because I can tell you now, fuck man, it gets tough. Anyone who tells you that it doesn't get tough, they're talking cock. They are talking shit, right? It gets tough and you just need to push through those tough times, no matter whether you're crawling, no matter whether you're pulling yourself on your bum or whatever you're doing. You need to get through those tough times and you need to continue pushing forward. On that note, I'm going to love and leave you like I usually do. Keep smiling, keep laughing, and keep being kind to one another. Much love, your friend who just didn't quit, Mandy.